Welcome to the Mom Owned and Operated podcast, the podcast about moms and for moms, where we have candid conversations about running a business, raising a family, and remembering ourselves. I'm your host, Rita Suzanne, a single mom of four, digital strategist, and provider of no-nonsense business strategies and tactics. Hi, this is Rita Suzanne, and this is Mom Owned and Operated. Today, I have my guest, Macaira, with me. Macaira, I'm so excited to chat with you and talk about all the things. Please tell everyone all about you, your family, and your business.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited as well. So yeah, like you said, my name is Macaira Smith. I am a mother to a wonderful but so independent and so sassy little toddler. She is, in a couple days, she'll be 19 months old, so almost a 2-year-old. And wow, I have no idea where the time has gone. Currently, we live on the East Coast. My family is a bit nomadic, so we're stationed in Pennsylvania right now. But honestly, that could change. That could change at the drop of a dime. So, but I'm from the East Coast. My husband is originally from down south, so him moving up to, what he would call nor'easter winters has been an interesting change for our family. But
Yeah.
And I am a launch copywriter. I specialize in sales pages. I've been doing this for just over a year now, and I was started doing this part-time and finally left my 9-to-5 back in December, and I've been freelancing full-time since January, and it has just been like the best switch that could have happened for me first of all, and then for my family as well. So it's a very, very quick overlay of who we are. Yeah.
So what has been the most exciting, what has been the best part of the transition for you?
Yeah. It has been really life-changing to be the one to call my own shots. I understand that a lot of people are in situations where they can't be their own boss, and you have to do what works best for you and your family. I completely understand that, but for me, it was killing me not being able to, I guess selfishly live how I wanted, but at the same time not being able to be there for my daughter without worrying. I had an hourly job, so anytime because she started daycare last summer, and up until she started daycare, she had no sickness. Like, she was perfect in that regard. And then as soon as she started daycare, from July to December, everything came, and then she would get it, and then we would get it. You know how it goes. And so, worrying about not having enough sick time to take so I can take her to the doctor, and then having to take off, every month I would have, 4 or 5 days I'd have to take off to just be there for her. And, of course I'm going to do what I have to do for my daughter. There's no question about that. But then along comes will I have enough money to pay rent? Will I have enough money to buy her diapers, buy her clothes, buy her food? She was formula fed, so that was a whole nother expense as well. And, freelancing full time hasn't necessarily been the easiest, but at the same time, I have the freedom to make it work for us. And that's just been like this huge load off of my shoulders. And it sounds corny, but I really do think it's made me a better mom, just because I feel more myself. And again, there've been hard days, but at the same time, I've just seen this switch in who I am and how who I am as a mom too, because I have that freedom, and it's almost like a confidence boost as well too, being in charge of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It reminds me of the whole reason that I started my business. I started because I wanted to be home with my sons.
and I would drop them off at daycare, and I hated it. I would cry, and I just, I just didn't like it. And I had went through like 5 years of infertility. So to me, I was like, I went through all this trouble, and now I'm over here,
Mhm.
paying for somebody else to spend all this time with my son. And, so I was like, I have to find something that I can do. I have to figure out what it is that I can do best. And so I taught myself web design, and that was just what I decided that I was going to do. What got you into copywriting, and specifically launch copy? Because that I love that you niche down, into something so specific, because a lot of times people won't do that. So what got you into that?
So, about 2 years ago is when I was first introduced to copywriting, because I knew I was in a career at the time where I knew I wanted out, but I didn't know what was the next step. So I first looked at like VA, because I just didn't I have no like design skills. I don't know how to program like code, which is what my husband does, and all this stuff. So I was like, what am I gonna like what I don't know anything. What can I do? So thank God for like targeted ads, because somehow, some way, a copywriting course came up on like Facebook for me. And I was like, you know what? There's been one constant in my life. I've been writing papers, because at that time I was getting my master's. I was like, I've been writing papers since, birth at that point. But I knew that I knew the basics of writing, and I knew that I could learn how to copyright.
Yeah.
And so that's really what got me interested. I then purchased the course and really just fell in love with it. It just really aligned with all of my skills and all of my assets.
Mm-hmm.
Launch Copy, I found a program. It's called Sales Page Prep School, run by an amazing launch copywriter, Danny Page. And her sales page got me, just talking about how, because I at that time I had been given the advice, like, don't niche down, because you want to be marketable. You want to show people that you can do XYZ, because they were like, if you only say you do this one thing, you're missing out on 10 opportunities to be hired. And, I understood that. And I see the merit in it, but thinking about up leveling and thinking about making this a viable career, it just made sense to specialize in something. And sales pages are something that, while it is a niche, so many people need it, and so many people need launch copy. And I took the plunge, and here I am. And yeah.
I love that. And I think it's interesting that people were saying don't niche down, because it's almost the advice of everyone is to niche down.
Yeah.
and and I get, maybe they were saying that so that you could, especially because you were new, so that you could kind of figure out what was best for you and figure out where you wanted to like hone your skill set. And maybe that was the reason why. But yeah, like niching down, especially for someone newer, will help you to get more clients, right? Because you're focused in and you're targeted on who you're going to sell to for
Mhm.
yourself. So who is your target audience? Like who are you working with the most?
So I work primarily with people in the birth space. So fertility coaches, prenatal nutritionists, sleep consultants, or those who have sleep courses, doulas, etc. People. Yeah.
And how did you like get into that niche?
Yeah, it honestly just started with cold pitching. I was, obviously, to get started, that's how I was doing client acquisition. And, just one day I looked and I was like, I'm pitching a lot of people who are like doulas or have a sleep course and all that. So maybe this is just,
Who it
you know,
is?
where to stay. And I, since becoming a mom, I feel like that's something I can relate to, in certain ways, but it just all kind of fell into place. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. For me, it was interesting because when I first started doing design, and was always into health and wellness, but I ended up working with a lot of health and wellness coaches. And it wasn't that I sought them out. It just so happened that one of the first, or, couple of clients that I got were health and wellness professionals. And then it just ended up that's who I started working with. So it's very similar in that aspect. So, does it make it challenging for you to kind of do research on those sensitive topics, or is that something that you're more comfortable with?
I would say it's a good mixture. For example, like working with a fertility coach, I have, I had my own struggles with infertility, but certainly not, I don't mind saying this. I had a miscarriage before I was pregnant with my daughter, and it was completely unexpected, but I got pregnant very quickly after I had that. And I know, just in my own personal circle, that's not the case for many women dealing with infertility. And so when I'm thinking of, copy to write for that, I'm comfortable in the sense that I can understand, that devastation, that pain that comes with that loss. But at the same time, it's not easy for me to understand going through that cycle multiple times. And so that's really where, it's kind of like I have somewhat of a good foundation, and I have to really press into my research to round out the picture, because I dare not speak for an experience that I can't understand. But at the same time, there are elements that I went through in my own journey. So it's really where I rely heavily on, like voice of customer research to help fill in those gaps.
Yeah, I think that it's important to be able to understand those pain points, and based on your own personal experience, that helps you to kind of dive into it. And that's important. So I want to just ask, because I feel like it's something that a lot of copywriters probably are dealing with now and feeling, and that is the whole AI situation. Like, how do you feel about AI, as far as, like, do you think it's going to take your job? Do you think you can be replaced with AI? What are your feelings?
I don't want this to come across as like, presumptuous or anything, but I don't think it will replace my job. I'm not worried. I see technology as something that is a huge asset and can be a huge time saver. Personally, I don't use it much in my copy, but I know a lot of copywriters who utilize it because it saves them time, and that is anything that's going to help you save time that comes across still as what the client wants and what speaks to their audience. I see no harm in that. There are always going to be people who are, for lack of better terms, taking shortcuts. And so if someone wants to use AI to write their whatever copy, that's great. But know that there's always going to be shortcomings with AI, because while it can generate stuff like that, it's not it's not human. It can't understand, it can't empathize, it can't relate. And that's really what value a copywriter brings. And, they can come up with strategy as well, which is something I do as a launch copywriter. But at the same time, it collects data. It collects data. It doesn't have that experience, of working with a customer through all of that. And so I think it's a great tool. And if I bring no judgment to people who utilize it, but I'm not scared of it.
Yeah, I feel the same way, because I use, for as far as like for strategy, and I tell my clients and things, it's okay to use it. And I think that it is good in some instances, but you have to know how to use it, right? First, you need to develop your brand strategy. You need to have that clearly mapped out. And then you don't just go in there and say, hey, push me out a blog post about, I don't know, chickens. I don't know. You don't just go in there and do that. First, you need to start with an outline. You need to have there has to be a flow. And then regardless of the results, you need to read through it, and then you modify it, and then you add your personal touch. And the same thing with the strategy and any type of copy. I just think that oftentimes people feel like, oh, I'll just go to AI and I'll just push out any type of content, and then it comes off where you can read it and you can tell this is not
Right.
it just doesn't connect. It's so disconnected. And sometimes even if I'm using it and it'll spit out something, I'm like, I would never use this word. What are you doing?
Yeah.
you know?
You bring up a really good point. If you don't know how to use it, it's useless, because there's a certain method to the madness, I'll say. And you have to know how to use the prompts, and you have to know how to I can't remember who, but I heard someone explain AI is like, you're walking it through, say you're at like some like office, and you're walking it through the office, showing them, introducing them to each person, showing them what each room does and what function. And then after you've shown them everything and given them everything, that's when it, really pumps out that info. If you just show up at a building, this office building, and say, okay, chat, tell me, fill a report out of everything for me, it's not going to do what it's designed to do.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And I think that's what people do. They just go in and they're like, yeah, give me this report about this house. And then they're like, okay, it's 300 square feet,
Yeah.
the very basics. But and that's what I try to tell people is like, if you're going to use it, it's not going to be quick either. It's going to be a process, right? Because you're going to have to go through, like you said, every single room, every single thing, and it's going to be a process for you. So, yes, it's going to be faster than you sitting down and maybe doing it yourself, but it's still going to be a process. And even then, your results may not even be effective.
Right.
They may not even convert. I'd love to see a test of like what, to set like A/B test results against each other to see what would convert better.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
For sure.
So since you are focusing on launch copy, what do you recommend for a successful launch? Like, what have you seen really works?
Yeah. I see success when people are prepared. It sounds like the most basic thing, but there are so many components to a launch, and it can easily be overwhelming. And sometimes when, if you're anything like me, if you're doing something that's overwhelming, you tend to let things go to the side, because you're like, they're just, I'm laser focused, so I only need to focus on this thing. But with a launch, there's so many different components. First of all, you need to decide what sort of launch. Is it an evergreen launch, or are you going to do like a live launch? And then you have to decide what's going to, how am I announcing this? Am I doing a webinar? Am I doing like an email series? The options are endless, but you have to decide. So you have to have all of the components lined up into place so that you can move forward and be prepared. And, you have to consider, like, can I do this on my own? Do I need to hire a web designer? Do I need to hire a copywriter? Do I need to hire a marketing consultant? What will I need? It's kind of like, what do they say? Chefs, when they're creating, they do the mise en place, they have everything they need right there, so that they don't need to go anywhere when they're cooking. Everything that they need is in front of them. And that's really what I think sets someone up for a successful launch. Of course, you're going to have questions throughout the way, and that's totally fine. But if okay, I want to do a live launch and I'm going to do a webinar, it's okay to ask, like, okay, how do I get this? How do I spread the word? How do I, leverage my email list to get them on this webinar? Those questions are okay. But if you know what you want, it'll be so much smoother than trying to, you're 2 weeks out. Oh, I need something to announce this. What am I going to do? Oh, maybe I can just go on my social, do a live, and that'll do, maybe that'll work. Who knows? But it won't be as successful if you put in the work to prepare and, really set yourself up for that success.
Yeah, it really takes a plan, and it takes a lot of time. And I think that people don't realize how much work it takes to put into an actual launch, whether it is, evergreen or not. So, okay, so let's switch a little bit and let's talk about how it's been for you as far as like, the transition to be working at home now with your daughter there and seeing clients? How are you able to take care of you? Like, what are you doing for yourself? How are you finding that whole process?
Yeah. So we, when I quit my job, my daughter was in daycare, and we made the decision to keep her in daycare because we just saw she was growing a lot, even though she was getting sick every other day. She was growing, and we only have one daughter, and she really doesn't socialize with other kids outside of that. So we just felt, for us, it was important for her to get that time. So on the other hand, though, I had the freedom to, before she was there from 8:30 to 5:30, she doesn't have to be there that long.
Yeah.
I have the freedom to pick her up, you know, after she's had her lunch and nap. I can pick her up and then spend the time with her. And of course, when she's sick and all, because that still happens. Goodness, does that still happen? But it really, having that time to work at home and meet with clients without that disruption is really big. It really does help. It helps me breathe. I don't want to say I feel guilty about that, because I think as moms, we find way too many reasons to be guilty. Sometimes unconsciously, it just happens. But I know that even though I am a mom, I'm still me. I'm still the same person I was before I became a mom. It's just different. It's just a new component to who I am. And so I do appreciate the time I have to work on my business, because that helps. I talked about how that builds my confidence, but at the same time, it helps me feel like I'm making a contribution. I, I don't like to feel useless, I'll say. And so that does help and give me a sense of purpose. But at the same time, I've been able to, a couple of weeks ago, my parents were close by on business, and I took my daughter to their hotel, and we went swimming for the day. And that was just having the freedom to manage that, fit that into my schedule, and, not worrying about blocking that day off. Not worrying about what's going to happen if I don't work, Monday to Friday, strictly these hours. It's just been really so freeing. And I don't mind sharing this as well. I've struggled with depression for most of my life, and it was really, really bad when I was pregnant. And that's when I really decided that I wanted to take charge, and I wanted to live on my terms, I'll say. And since leaving that hourly job and coming into freelancing, it's been really good for my mental health. And I know that has a direct correlation on, who I am as a person, who I am as a mom, who I am as a wife. And, it's just, I've just seen, I've been able to enjoy being a mom. And I wouldn't change that for anything in the world. I would not give that up. And it's lovely.
I love that. I love hearing other moms talk about how they were able to implement childcare in their business life right away, because that wasn't something that I was able to do, because my sons were 4 and 6. Now, my one son, he was in kindergarten, but it was half day. And so my younger one, he was in pre-K, and that was for like 2 hours, but I had to take him there. So just imagine, so I probably would get a break, maybe 1 hour a day. So it makes it worth it to, if you're able to invest in childcare, because you're able to spend that time working dedicated to your business and
Right.
just focus on that. And then when your child is home, you're able to switch it off and turn into mom. Whereas when I was starting my business, I would have to stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. And it made it really hard. And so I was working way more because I wasn't able to have that focused time. So I love hearing that you're able to implement childcare right away. And I think it's great for the children because they're able to socialize.
Yeah.
And like you said, it gives us the freedom because if you want to leave or you know, can leave, you can go and pick her up whenever you know, feel inclined and say, you know what, I miss my baby. I want to hang out, you know,
Yeah.
and you can do that. And I think that that's wonderful. And, you know, and I completely understand about the, you know, sometimes the struggles that we go through I always say that, you know, having a business will help you get through any mental mindset issues that you might have because you're able to clearly work through them without the pressure and the stress of your job kind of interfering with. I feel like when I started my business is when I really started to know myself again. Like
Yeah.
it was almost like I lost myself when I worked in corporate. And when I started my business is when I was like, oh, you're back, you know? And so I feel like it does give us that time to kind of um, discover who we are and deal with the problems that we have. And I think that that's a wonderful like side effect of
Mhm.
having a business, even though it's hard. I don't want anybody to think it's not hard. It is hard.
Yeah, it really is.
Speaking of hard, let's talk about if another mom came to you and she wanted to start a business, what would be your advice to her? What would you say?
I would, give the advice that if you are whatever sort of business you're looking to do, whether it be some sort of like VA or copywriting, web design, you you need to learn from someone. So find a course, a mentor, someone that you trust and you're learning from. Find some influencers, I guess, for lack of a better word, who their content is also teaching you, their content is helping you. But once you find those like 4 to 5 people, don't follow anyone else in that field. Sure, make friends and follow them. You need that sense of community, but starting out, if you are going to, because this is the mistake I made, if you're going to follow anyone and everyone um, who does what you're doing, you're going to fall so quickly into that comparison game, and it's going to derail you. Because, and I'm sure you've heard the saying, but like you can't compare your step one to someone else's step 10. And social media is also very good at only highlighting the good. So you're going to look at someone, at least I did, you're going to look at someone in their journey and say, wow, they're not struggling. I must be doing something wrong. And what's wrong with me? And then it's going to keep you from making that progress. So I would give the advice to just find people who are going to help you, educate you, because you need that. You need that education. And then once you feel confident in who you are, what you offer, that sort of thing, then expand your network to, because, following and staying current on, trends in your field and all that is very, very essential. But I just think establishing who you are first so that you're not losing your joy and your drive, I think is very, very critical.
Yeah, I think there's some good points in that because you don't want to listen to too many people because there's sometimes conflicting advice there and it becomes confusing. Another thing I would just want to kind of clarify is if you are looking for mentors, like make sure that they're not so far ahead of you that they're disconnected from where you are,
Yeah.
because I find that that's usually an issue is that people will want to hire the big person, but the big person really honestly doesn't understand your struggle at this, because they're so far away from it. And, um, it's like they can read as many pain point surveys, I guess, as they want, but I don't know that they'll really understand. So where can people find you? Where do you hang out online? Where are you at?
So my website is probably the best way to get in touch with me, which is macsmithcopy.com, M-A-C smithcopy.com. I figured it was easier to do Mac instead of Macaira because no one knows how to spell that, which is fine. And then you can look me up on Instagram, which is the same Mac Smith Copy, or M Smith Copy. I can't remember which one. But I will say I'm responsive on Instagram. I don't post a lot on Instagram. Trying to be better at that, but at the same time, I'm comfortable with what it is. But my website really is the best way to get in touch with me.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for being a guest. I have loved chatting with you. It's been wonderful.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
And there you have it. I want to encourage you to remember that being a mom who runs her own business is not easy. We all struggle, but just keep moving forward and don't forget to make time for yourself. As moms, we are usually the first thing to go to the bottom of the list. If your business is overwhelming you and you need real solutions, not just some sugar-coated suggestions, apply to work with me at ritasuzanne.com/apply.